Did you see Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot? She just came out because now racism is a thing that people are proud of, and said she was going to do no one-on-one interviews with anybody other than black or brown people. So evidently white people and Asian people are not allowed to interview the mayor of Chicago. Imagine what would happen if an Asian person came out and said, I'll only do interviews with Asian people. Or if a white person came out and said, I'll only do interviews with white people, people would lose their mind. But Lori Lightfoot comes out and says she'll only do interviews with black and brown people and a one-on-one setting. And this is ironic on some level because she's married to or dating a white woman. So she's perfectly fine in her own personal relationships choosing to be with a white woman, but she's not willing to interview with anybody other than a black or brown person. This is utterly ridiculous. It's the foundation, by the way, of racism, and it's evidence of how things have evolved here, where super racist behavior is now considered to be fine if it is being instituted by someone who is a minority. And let me just say this. I've long made this argument. The most important conversation that needs to occur in America as it relates to race is this. Every single race can be racist. Imagine how the media narrative would change if we just adopted what is fundamentally 100% true as a statement of principle. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, your background doesn't matter. All races are capable of racism. Because right now, the default presumption that the media has created is that only white people are racist, and by and large, they are only racist against black people. This is a 1950s or earlier, 1960s or earlier worldview of America. First of all, Hispanics are the largest racial minority group in the United States today. And also, the fastest growing other than Hispanics is Asian. And yet we are defining race in America as if it is still the 1950s or the 1960s, and the only two races here are white people and black people. Our conversation and our discussion of race has, in my opinion, gone backwards in a major way. And the reason is because we are not recognizing what is the current situation in America today, and we insist only on the victimization and the victim culture, and it only exists one way, white to black. That's pretty much the only way the media covers race today. And it doesn't tie in when there's racism going on. For instance, most of the victims of Asian American hate that is going on in the United States right now are Asian with black people who are the aggressors. Asian victim, black victimizers. And yet, because that doesn't fit the perceived narrative, it receives a fraction of the attention. And so my question for you is, imagine how much different our national discussion on race in the United States, which, by the way, I think if you look at race around the world, the United States is probably the least racist country in the world, honestly, because almost no other nation in the world is anywhere near as diverse as the United States is. And certainly very few countries in the world have ever elected, for instance, a racial minority as president of their country. So just think about that a little bit. And so what I would ask you to do is contemplate how our national discussion on race would be different if we just adopted this premise: every race has racist. Changes everything. Instead of constantly having someone convinced that they are always the perpetrator of racism, which is a lot of white people who then withdraw from the overall discussion surrounding racism as in the country because they are like, hey, we're always blamed for everything. And instead of black people believing, hey, we could never be racist, which many black people believe, Imagine how much different and more productive our national conversation would be if we adopted the principle, which I think is irrefutably true, that all races have racists within them. Doesn't matter if you're white, Asian, black, or Hispanic, and we should combat the idea of racism, stereotyping, prejudice, all of those things, because they are inherently stupid and devalue the overall individuality of all people, because we are boiling them down to something that none of us can control, that is the color of our own skin. I think that would be a monumental pivot and important progress. And I get frustrated because I don't see any politician saying that. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, that's a conversation that we should be having, because that's where I think America is.